Okay, it's streaming now.
All right.
So, yay, we are live. And I guess I'll just start really quick. Oh, wait, we want to start recording as well.
Yep.
Um, okay, awesome. Okay. Well, good morning. Good morning to everybody, everyone, and welcome to the Flipping the Script Executive Roundtable discussions. This is our second roundtable. We're really excited, right, Donna?
Yes.
And I'm Angelica Benavides, also known as Dr. B, and I'm honored here with such powerful leaders and I know educators and change makers from across the community that will be joining us. And today is about one thing and like a real conversations that leads us to real solutions. And I just want to say that we're not here for more programs. We're here to shift mindsets, align leadership, and really help to really take action to and refocus, right? Our focus today is centered around two critical conversations impacting education right now. And the first one is leadership energy. It's going to be led by Jeff Sabol and Dr. Donna Vallese because how leaders show up determines how the entire systems function. And then the second conversation that we cannot ignore is teacher burnout, which I'll be leading because when our educators are exhausted and our systems cannot thrive, this is a space for honesty. This is a space for collaboration. And most importantly, this is a space to flip the script on what's no longer working. So let's go ahead and engage and let's begin.
All
You
right.
want to do some introductions?
Yeah, let's do some introductions. So, I'm Dr. Donna. I am the CEO of Inspiring Leaders, and Angelica Benavides is my Dr. B is my joint venture partner in a couple different things in educational luminaries where we publish we publish really great leaders who are in collaborative books who are doing amazing work in education that's making a difference. And we have Improve Ed Exchange that is also it's a directory for education. So if you think Angie's List or Thumbtack, specifically for education. So we've just gotten that started. We're building that, and that's what we have going on. Um, do you want to do any more introductions of yourself, Angelica?
No, I just want to say that, you know, and I know some of you have heard it, but we're not going to get tired of repeating it because connections and network really builds uh strong connections like with Donna and myself. Donna and I met in Ireland. We were doing a mastermind over there with amazing executive leaders around the world, and me and her connected. And this is how we started because we both had similar goals and focus. And one of them was flipping the script and revolutionizing the educational system. And we began, like she said, with collaborative books, getting authors to write so that we can then turn it around and introduce you or introduce them, the authors, to school districts to help fill in those gaps that are needed.
Yeah. Uh, DJ, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm DJ Nicholson. I'm the founder of Inclusivology, and I support schools and teachers and school leadership with coaching and professional development to support student engagement to make sure that all kids are included in learning, including those with neurodivergencies and disabilities.
All right. And Jeff.
Good morning. Yep, my name's Jeff Sabol. I'm 23 years of sixth grade science in an urban setting. I grew up in a rural area, so teaching in an urban setting was an amazing experience. And then met Dr. Donna with my first administrative experience and found out what real energy can be. And so I've done 3 years of basically pre-K through 12th grade experience in administration. And just my biggest thing is I've experienced all those differences, as we're going to hear today with the catabolic, anabolic energy. I've experienced both, and I've seen the change in weeks in a building. So I'm very excited to be able to be part of a team who's coming up with ways to help leaders and anybody really identify, embrace, and be able to work with that. So very excited. But
yeah. So Jeff and I met obviously in Green, New York, where we were administrators together. And Jeff's energy struck me right at the interview process. And he led with a lot of really positive energy and really had made some great shifts in his building. And so he's also been helping me with some of the work that I've been doing. And so I've asked him to join us today, and talking about this leadership energy piece, right? So I don't think that we'll just jump right in here. I don't think that people ever really, no one ever wakes up in the morning and says, I want to have a really bad day. I want to like micromanage everyone. I want to make everyone's life miserable. I want to be frustrated all day. No, we don't wake up that way. I mean, if you do, then please call me, because I can probably talk you off the ledge. But no, we wake up and we want to have a good day, right? And it's all about energy. So if you think of like 2 different meetings that you've been in, right? One meeting, you walked out of that meeting feeling energized. You can't wait to get to work. Oh my goodness, we just accomplished so much in that meeting. We solved so many problems, right? You walk out of there feeling anabolic energy, right? And the other meeting I want you to think about is the one where you walk out feeling depleted, exhausted before lunchtime even happens, feeling that level of frustration because you just wasted a whole bunch of time in that meeting, or just wondering what on earth just happened in there. Holy cow. And then all the kibitzing starts. That's more catabolic energy. And those feelings that you feel, that's the energy that we're talking about here. And it impacts how we lead. So when we talk about catabolic energy or anabolic energy, that catabolic energy, it is reactive, and it sounds like urgency and frustration all the time. And it's a natural reaction. It's a human reaction, because when we're going fast, like we are in education, it is easy to just make snap judgments and make snap decisions without making a conscious decision on how we want to show up, right? And so it's not always bad to have this catabolic energy, but when it's there all the time, then there's a few things that start to happen. Your teachers start to lose their ownership, and learning starts to become more surface level rather than deeper. And it impacts, that all ends up trickling down to the students, and the students impact, like your energy as a leader impacts students. When we lead anabolically, though, and we're full of anabolic energy, we're proactive rather than being reactive. We're very intentional. You actually have to choose anabolic energy. Some people are really good at doing this naturally. And I would say Jeff is one of those people who's very good at just being anabolic most of the time. And there's different levels of this, right? But it sounds like curiosity instead of being very certain that you know exactly what the answers are all the time. It sounds like just being open to new ideas, right? And when you operate anabolically, that energy allows you to see multiple perspectives. It allows you to see multiple ways to solve a problem. And when you're reactive, it's so quick, and it comes just kind of from that gut space, and it's there to that catabolic energy is there to protect us. So, um, Jeff, I want you to be able to add your 2 cents in here now that I've just kind of described the anabolic and catabolic, and put this into layman's terms for everybody.
Right. Okay. And I can try to help there. I mean, and because we might have everything from teachers to school administrators to district leaders watching this, to even state. That's great. And I've been a firefighter as well, volunteer since 1994. So I can, people think of firefighters and there's a house fire and you just run to the scene, you just start throwing water and smashing down windows and knocking down load bearing walls and just swinging your axe at any smoke you could see. That's kind of your catabolic response. But no, in reality, there is catabolic times in a school district. If you take an emergency lockdown situation or something where some things have to happen very quickly, very direct, catabolic fine. But then you've got to switch it over. So a lot of us have heard about the toxic stress and the AIMS and all those the systems like that. It can become toxic if it's the majority. I kind of see it that way. Back to the firefighting, when you go to a call, you got to take a breath, start the truck. You got to think about what you're doing because you got to get there safe. So take that breath, take that minute. And when you get to the scene, you size up the scene. You do a walk around. Yes, there could be lives in danger. There could be things. But if you take out the wrong door, you remove the wrong window, you're going to create a situation that's far worse. So taking that minute, and we call it sizing up the scene, and this could be in a school district, this could be any business, anywhere, and taking a look at really what is the root cause, what is causing the fire. Is there a fuel leak? Is there an electrical issue? Is doing something that might not even be directly hitting the fire itself yet, could that help more? And then you plan your attack, you get your teams together, you work with them, you have your officers, they're trained what they do, and you do your missions, you keep checking in. So that piece is huge. So I like to use that as an analogy with the whole system, and just to be able to see it and rely on your professional capital. If I was an officer and I have 3 lieutenants working under me, which could be, the superintendent and your principals, you don't do everything yourself. You can't. You've got to delegate. You've got to rely on your professional capital. Those principals need to rely on the professional capital of their staff. And that staff, those teachers, can rely on professional capital of their students. And if you allow that, if you take that breath and allow that to percolate up through, any problem can be solved, and people are part of the solution. When you're part of the solution, that stress that Donna was talking about, that pulling into your silos and sucking. And I've been a teacher 23 years. I've been on both sides. I pulled into my classroom, done what I had to do, and kept my head low. And I've been able to be transparent and open. And it is based on what that leader is projecting. So I'm not sure if that helps a little bit with the analogy, but
yeah. So I want to invite others who are on our call here. What are your reactions? What are your thoughts around this? Have you seen catabolic leaders and anabolic leaders, and what are your experiences?
I just want to say that, sometimes I love your analogy. I really love it, on the fire, because in fact, today I woke up with that thought. It was like, sometimes we have those emergency moments that things have to be done like as fast as possible, right? Like getting the fire, like stopping the fire. But some of the leaders that I've dealt with in the past, it's a very slow process. It's like, no, we have to go through here. We have to ask permission. It's like, really? When there's fire, like we don't have to ask permission to turn it off, right? To put out the fires. So sometimes the leadership feels like walking into a fire ourselves. And that instinct to reacting fast, grabbing the water. But like you said, really trying to figure out, where is the fire coming, or where did it start? is really important. I really love it. I love it. And it's something that we really need to talk about, because I think right now, especially at this moment, and I know in Texas, we have to change, like, for example, that energy of teaching to the test, right? Teaching to the standard test. Like we have to put that fire out, because we're not preparing our kids for the future. So that's where I'm at.
So I just want to add on to what Jeff said about, the fire and, getting to the scene of the fire and doing an assessment and analysis and being very mindful of what the plan of addressing that situation is. And I think, one thing that we have to remember to do on the other end of an emergency or whatever is happening, that we do some problem solving and some conversation at the end, talking about what went right, how was our collaboration, what could we have done differently, having some open conversations. It's that, like, the old acronym of PDSA. We plan, we do it, we study it, we consider some different ideas, and then we act on whatever those changes are going to be. So I feel like it's the intention going in, but then there's the conversation on the back end that can propel us in a more solution-centered direction. And being a district leader in Florida, I saw a lot of putting out fires. That was an acronym. That was an expression that we use. We put out fires all the time, and when we did that, there was a lack of intentionality. So we couldn't have the follow-up that would lead to more impactful learning and experiences for kids and teachers. So I think, that word that I kind of lean into is intention, that we're intentional about our energy and our conversations, because, like Donna said, all of that trickles back to kids. And so when teachers and students have ownership and they feel like they can be part of the solution and they're involved in those conversations, I think there's a huge energy shift overall, not just for leadership, but for teachers and for kids.
Absolutely.
And
Can you all hear me?
Oh, yeah, I got you, Donna. The one thing you can't forget is, once that fire's out, and like I said, in our service, we'll tag things out. You can't turn on your appliances till things have been checked. Electrical systems, we have something called circuit breakers. If those circuit breakers trip, there's something wrong. And if that caused a fire, you just don't go bypass the circuit breaker and put a piece of tinfoil in there to make it work. It's going to start another fire. So identifying those, what tripped the breaker, what caused it, and
Right.
taking that time to dig deep in any setting, educational, and find out, looking, you get bad test scores, again, that's something that happened in the past. Those are those indicators that you got to look back and, okay, well, what was that? How can we integrate? How can we not change these awesome dynamics these teachers are having and doing, but still get to that goal with intentionality of improving those scores. And DJ was talking about, like, Florida and some of the changes there, and like New York, we're in this really weird gray zone right now with the portrait of a graduate. So it's the new whole concept coming out that's going from a lot of, your regents, your test base, your memorize, regurgitate, repeat situation in the traditional classroom, to demanding that we become critical thinkers, innovative problem solvers, effective communicators, social emotional learners, global citizens, project-based learning, standards-based grading. There is a lot right now coming down on these schools, but we still have the Regents exams to do. We still have to, quote unquote, teach to the test in a lot of situations. So how do we blend that? How do we integrate that? How do we bridge this during this transitional time? And at what point can schools just jump in and switch it over? These are all things that are unanswered right now. So that causes so much stress to the system. As a leader, how do you take that in, interpret it, and what do you put down to your staff? What do you put down to your, I mean, transparency is great, but sometimes that can extend that catabolic energy and really do the opposite of what your intent was. Is kind of what I'm saying. And it's a very tricky time the next 4 or 5 years here.
Yeah. And, you know, to add on to that, Jeff, I think any school district that's trying to make any type of transformation, you get these mandates down from the state. Now, granted, I am philosophically aligned with what is in Portrait of a Graduate. Like that, I am so excited for our educational system in New York State. If we can really pull this off, there's some significant changes. And so what I want to encourage, if anyone listening in is from New York State, make small adjustments along the way. Don't get overwhelmed by the initiative mandates and the things that are coming down. Make sure that they align, that you can weave them in to your systems to keep them coherent, right? When I'm going to shift slightly, when I worked for the Rhode Island Department of Education, I had the opportunity to work with the entire state of superintendents, principals, vice principals, all the administrators. And up until that point, I used to say, my colleagues would say, you need to be a principal. And I'd say, I don't want to be a principal. Like, who wants to do that? And then they say, no, you need to be a principal. Well, once I started working with all of those leaders, what I realized is that those that operated catabolically were able to make transformation and really raise scores and keep them high in their school districts. And those that were more catabolic about the work that we were doing, their schools were struggling. And so there's something to that, right? So I want to get at, like, when that leader is leading anabolically or catabolically, how does that impact students? Let's dig into that a little bit more too, before we then get to the solution piece. What have you all seen?
So one thing that I've seen when there's an initiative that's coming down the pike, whether it's a district-led initiative, a state initiative, is there's this sense of urgency that it has to happen absolutely immediately. And so there's a failure to plan. There's a failure to have a rollout in a way that is, again, intentional, solution-centered, and we lose track of that. So I feel like when it's that, fight or flight reaction from administrators and school and district leaders, that trickles down to teachers, where they're feeling the pressure and they're feeling the stress, and that ultimately trickles down to students, because they can feel that. They can feel their teacher, being short or unsure of how to go about teaching the lesson that they're teaching, how to release learning to students. And so then there's that upset within the classroom, in culture, right at the classroom level, where, how can I put this? So it just trickles down, and there's that chaotic feeling from the district or the state, where there's a lack of surety that trickles down to kids, and they feel that. So even, I always would encourage, I encourage teachers when I'm out coaching, have a plan of how you're going to start your day, have a routine, be predictable. It's that prediction that can help kids feel very settled when they first come in during the day. But if teachers don't feel settled in what they're doing and what their expectations are, it's very hard for kids to have that too.
Absolutely. And I think the other piece of this is as initiatives come down, or those mandates come down from the state, I think that we forget, like, it always feels like it's something extra, right? It's like this new thing. So we're adding this new silo, and we forget to where the links are. So when Portrait of a Graduate is coming down in New York State specifically, actually it's coming down in multiple states. Um, if I were in a leadership position instead of being a consultant right now, what I would be doing is looking at what the requirements are to get to actually, like, what is the end result of the initiative? What are we already doing that supports that? So that when I introduce that to my staff, I can say, here's what we're already doing that's going to support that. And if we actually look at that and we look at the end result, then we can build up to being able to fully implement Portrait of a Graduate instead of looking at it as it's just this new thing and we just have to do it, right?
Yeah,
And
can I tag in there a little bit there,
yeah,
Donna?
go for it.
What she's saying is important. It's not the addition to the work. It's really the unveiling of the work that our best teachers are already doing. So they've been doing this for years. The best teachers, the engaging teachers that don't teach necessarily to the test. The test is like that's the foundation. That's the ground level. That's the lowest. I'm not worried about that. I want to perform here, and the test is that's easy. That's the easy part. So the state also with this is changing the test to match the skills we've always wanted our kids to have. So we're really not changing our mission, but the system is finally, I guess, catching up to us in a way. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the new state tests and stuff, their reading, their comprehension, their all the information's there. You just have to be able to pull it out of context and be able to put it on, answer questions. So that critical thinking is huge. It's not about that rote memorization. The information's there. I taught the earth science, so you have all the reference tables, you have all this, but it's 3 pages of data reading and then questions and stuff based on it. So it's that process. So it is the system's finally catching up to those best teaching methods. So it's going to what I think most teachers in their heart really want to do.
Yeah. And really the shift is like every teacher knows how to implement a project in their classroom. Every teacher knows how to grade more performance-based, like doing a more performance-based assessment. Every teacher knows how to engage kids in conversation and discussion. What this is going to require, these types of shifts, is not to just occasionally do those things in your classroom, but to do them all the time. And that is the shift, right? And so when we're looking at teachers, they have been catering to what the systems have been allowing them to do, right? Which is stand in front of kids and give them information all day long. We're just pouring it into them like they're buckets, and limited engagement with the students, limited cognitive engagement. We just want the kids to memorize all this information when really it's not allowing them to get to the depth of learning. If we're going to pull Portrait of a Graduate off well in New York State, we've got to shift that. And in any state that's doing that, we have to shift to using the research on how kids learn. And then I've come up with this phrase, and maybe I didn't come up with it. Maybe I dreamt of it, or maybe I've read about it somewhere. But we really have to curate the learning experiences for our students every day. So some other systemic things are going to have to shift as well, right? And if we're going to keep people in a more anabolic state, we've got to be able to solve these problems, because it's going to take more on teachers' time to be able to plan that way, right? And so there's some big shifts that have to change. And without that, if we're not willing to change some of the systems and the structures, then we're going to keep people in this kind of anabolic state of like, well, there's nothing I can do, so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Right. So, yeah. So how do we like solve some of these problems that to help people, to help our administrators, to help our teachers stay in a more anabolic state? And not just rely on this catabolic energy all the time.
I can say one thing. I mean, how about like, oh, go ahead. DJ, did you want to go?
Oh, sure. I was just, so reflecting back on, some of a coaching experience I had last year out at a school, and it was a middle school. All three teachers said, I can't get my kids to think. Can't get them to think for themselves. I can't get them to have any kind of conversation. And so these teachers and I, we started the conversation about how they can release learning to students. Donna, you talked about, the traditional teaching where the teacher is standing at the front of the room. We have to build in some different systems that, number one, give teachers permission to step away from the board. I think that is critical, because when teachers are doing all the talking and the lecturing, they're the ones that are doing the thinking. And so we can think all. And so when we can give teachers permission to step away from the board, to have those conversations with students, and then take that a step further and let kids have conversations with each other, that collaborative conversation, really digging deeper into the content, like Donna said, stop skimming the surface of what's being taught and what's being learned, and actually digging into it and having those collaborative discussions. All of that saying that districts and states really have to provide teachers with a specific and planned rollout in how to do that, because I think in an ideal world where I see teachers, facilitating learning, they're checking in with groups, they're helping kids go deeper, they're pulling groups that might need a little bit of reteaching. That model of instruction would drastically shift, I think, the behavior and the lack of engagement that teachers are seeing. And that's what I hear a lot, not just from, these particular teachers that I was working with last year as an example, but all the teachers that I engage with. They're frustrated by behavior and the lack of engagement, but they're not given that opportunity to be meaningfully engaged in learning.
I think you said it right there, DJ. You said when teachers can become facilitators. I don't think it should be teachers anymore. It should be educational facilitators as a career, because that's it. You create the environment, you set up the stage, and you let those kids perform. You let them fail. I was a science teacher, like I said, 23 years. And when I was given permission, this is key for those administrators out there. When I had an administrator who gave me permission and encouraged me to get out of my comfort zone and to fail and to learn from that, and it's okay, and support that. And I jumped into standards-based grading with a small group of people among 1,400 staff members to test it out. After 18 years, I had to forgive myself, because when I learned the standards-based grading and I started having communication with students and took away the behavior piece, took away the bring a can of beans in to get 100, and actually looked at what is a grade, and that it's based on the standards and your understanding and mastery of those standards, and then take it another step. And they allowed me to assess these students, not give zeros after 3 days, but tell me what you know. I don't care how. I will assess you, and I will give you that a grade. And if you didn't do well, you go back and you learn it, and you can come back and you can show me that mastery. I am going to change that grade. It empowered students that even years later, I'm driving Uber, and I once in a while, and I'll get my former students, and they'll reflect on that, and just to hear how impactful that can be, you've given them ownership.
Absolutely. I hear in underlying all of that. So when we talk about like those things that are invisible that we don't always think about or really look at, it takes a level of trust. For one, if students are going to be able to explore in a classroom, they have to trust their teacher. But that teacher, in order to allow that to happen and to plan that way, they have to trust their administration, and that the principal and the vice principals, whoever's leading their building, to have their back, and that that principal has to also be able to trust either in their ability to stand up against district leadership, or to trust district leadership to back that up too. Because I've been in both places. I've been in places where I have all the trust from the superintendent to execute what I need to execute. I've also been in situations where I don't have that trust, and it's against my nature to do what is being told to us, right? And having to have that knot in my stomach all the time because I'm going to stand up for what's right for my kids.
Yeah.
So
Hey, Donna, I think your internet is a little off.
yeah,
I
I think so too.
Yeah. But I think I want to add that, leadership is not just about decisions. I think that it's about that energy that both of you are talking about. And it's really thinking about how do these leaders, or how do we as leaders convert problems across the system. Like, for example, every leader is always converting something. For example, if there's pressure, right? How do you create that pressure and turn it into clarity? How do you take chaos and begin to give some type of direction on how to conquer it? Like we were talking about fire. Or if there's problems, how do we create strategies? How do we turn it into strategies? So if the energy is reactive, I'm thinking that the system's going to be reactive. If the energy is unclear, then the teams are going to be very unclear, right? They're not going to know what steps to take next because there's not clear communication. So I think that it's not so much about what you're leading, but what are you converting, right? How are you taking that stress and converting it into structure, or overwhelm into priorities? Like, this is the first thing that needs to be addressed. And then again, later on, we're going to go into burnout. So when you see the burnout signals, how do you convert them into some type of systems, or redesign the systems that are taking place?
Absolutely. It's really all about how you decide to show up.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot determine our own circumstances, but we can determine how we show up. We have a choice in that. So, yeah, is there any other ideas or anything that we've left off the table here that we want to add in here before we shift over to teacher burnout?
I think the only thing I would say is encourage schools. It sounds like this is a lot of people getting this all or nothing mindset. Like we have to make this huge shift, and we're going to wait, we're going to plan it, we're going to do it all at once. And I would err against that. I would shift from testing to tasting. And like I mentioned with that standards-based grading, have a small scale pilots. Find those teachers with the energy. Find that group that really wants to jump in, and those are a lot of times your leaders in your buildings. And allow them to do a performance-based assessment, like a presentation or a portfolio, in place of the traditional test or something like that. Allow that staff to build I think I saw as competence muscles, basically, and demonstrate that and see how it works. And it draws the other teachers in, so it doesn't come down as a top-down mandate. So use that professional capital.
Absolutely. And trust your teachers to do it. They have the skills. They really need the permission and the structures. Give them the structures to do it too. So, all right. Well, I think we'll conclude this discussion, and thank you all so much for engaging in this. I'd like to shift this over to Dr. B. And
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm so excited about this topic because as a teacher, I lived it, where you get burned out And it's not a teacher problem. And I'm going to continue with that analogy you were using, Jeff, about the fire. Because there's fires happening, teachers get burned, and they burn out. So basically, we're not looking at the signals that they're giving us. We're not looking at their overwhelmment, when they're communicating to us. So as a teacher, I know that when I was teaching, someone trusted me and they gave me a position of being the master teacher of the department. And because we were collaborative and because we were working as a team and there was clear communication, we were able to take our scores from 20s and 30s. During that time, it was toss, and we took our scores up, and you could see the excitement and the energy with the students and the teachers because we worked as a team. Then they gave me the leadership opportunity to do it with the whole campus. And our whole energy shifted. We were performing. We even had parents coming and engaging, and it was a beautiful experience. But then I lived the other side too, and I lived it where there's no trust, when as teachers we have opinions, we have ideas, and yet the trust is not there, or they believe, no, these are the guidelines, these are the rules, you can't step out of the red line or the yellow line, and you have to stay there, and if you don't, then you're totally wrong. And I think that after 30 years in education and serving as a teacher and the good and the bad, right? And I could see how they've been drained, some of these teachers, the overwhelmment. And it's not that we don't love what we do. I think what begins to happen, that when we are so stuck in broken systems, we begin to lose the motivation. We begin to disengage. Our creativity. Donna knows I'm always out of the box, and she's like, come a little bit over here, because best state of mind because they're kept there. And then sometimes they don't step into their confidence, right, level, because they're being told, no, no, you can't do this, you can't try that. And then they're like, oh, everything I say is wrong. So then we stop their creativity, we stop their confidence, because we as leaders, we're holding them back. And then they begin to feel burnout because we have all these expectations, we have all these things that need to be done, and yet you're in a box. I mean, you're so tight in that box that you cannot function. So I don't know about you and your experience with teacher burnout. Anybody want to add something?
So I'll go ahead and start. First of all, I love that you also think outside of the box, Dr. B. I'm a big outside the box person. That as a coach, when I'm out in schools, giving teachers permission to be outside the box. And I think one of the things that I've seen with teachers where they're getting burned out is the way that feedback is getting delivered. So administrators come in, they do an observation, they sit for 5 or 10 minutes, they provide teachers with feedback, and instead of it feeling corrective and positive, it's more a directive of, you're not doing this right, I want you to do this, and it's a non-negotiable, you have to do it this way. So I think that in addition to the feedback not being positive and corrective, teachers feel defeated because they know when an administrator comes in, they're gonna tag me on something that I didn't do right, or I'm gonna be in trouble, or whatever it is. And then when you think about feedback and being corrective and supportive, that trickles down to kids, because when teachers to give positive, supportive, corrective feedback, and be very gentle with students to support them in learning, either learning something in a different way or processing something in a different way. But yet we're not doing that for teachers, and it feels very punitive and it feels defeating. And so I feel like when teachers feel that, then that's one of the big causes of burnout, that they're hearing the negative, they don't feel supported. Districts are crunched for, those outside support people that can come into schools and support teachers, coaches, mentor teachers. We don't see those out in schools as much as we used to because of cuts. So
Yeah.
teachers just don't feel supported.
Some of the things that I like about the math teachers, I just really have to say this, that they're thinking out of the box, because I was taught in a certain way to do like multiplication or add, addition. And then when I was teaching my kids, I wanted them to learn my way, right? And they're like, no, mom, you don't know how to how to do math, because they had a different system. They had a different way of doing math. And I was like, I don't know how to do it that way. So let me find out how to work and being able to guide them and teach them, because they are finding different ways in teaching math.
Mm-hmm.
If I could jump in real quick, something DJ said really just triggered one of the conversations I used to have with my students. And then when I became a principal, with my staff, and if I was a superintendent, I'd have this with my principals. Conversation is, it goes all the way back. You think outside the box, you have to have permission, but the risk is your brain, if you don't even realize it, happens in the background. Every single second, it is asking one question: am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? All the time. Kids, am I safe? Am I safe? The teachers, am I safe? The principals, am I safe? The superintendents, am I safe? With the board and the state. As soon as that is questioned, is that am I safe is, oh, I don't know if I am. That's when things start to pull in. That's when your fight, flight, freeze, and I have my favorite one, challenge, kicks in. And that's where always, and I'm very transparent. I was with my students. I said, you need to feel safe here. And that's why we build deep relationships, not just what's your favorite color, your friend next door, but take that time with any of your student staff and build those relationships, do the team building, get to know them, and really be part of a family. So that answer is yes to do I feel safe? It's not all the time. There's moments, but you can challenge it instead of fight, flight, or freeze. It allows you to choose that, be transparent, find the solutions when that I don't know if I'm safe. It gives you the power to get through that and then move on and be safe again.
Yeah. And
Jeff, if I could just piggyback on what you were saying too, one of the most positive teaching experiences I had as a young teacher was at a school where there was a very, very connective and supported culture. So our administrators were in the classrooms all the time. They would come in and they would learn alongside my kids. They would sit next to my kids. They were very, very present in the classroom. And so, like you were saying, Jeff, the idea of feeling safe and feeling like you can take some chances and some risks, and that people are going to be there to support you. I think that's huge. I think just an administrator visibility, that they are there to support teachers and kids in a positive way, not in a punitive way.
Yeah. And we have Wegmans. Wegmans is one of the top grocery stores in the country. They're always in Forbes as one of the top places to work. And their specific model of leadership is, we support our workers, we support our employees so that they can take care of the clients. Right. And that's not always the way we work in education,
Right.
But we should. We need, our job as leaders is to support our teachers so they can do the good work. And I want to take this in a little bit of a different direction, because you hear over and over again, our kids are different. Our kids can't this, our kids don't that. Parents are this and parents are that. And they're just different. And I've been teaching for 25 years and kids are just different now. Yeah, they're different because our society is different. Our technology access is different. Our access to information is different. My son was always like, Mom, why do I need to go to college? I can learn anything off of this right here, this phone, right? And so technology has completely shifted how we access information, and they can look anything up. They can, and we can. And so with that huge shift over even the last 10 years, and now with AI, it's totally different now. We have to teach differently, right? We can't keep teaching the same way, but our teachers need the structures and the permission in place to be able to do that and make that shift. We haven't changed our systems and structures. We can say we did, we just called it something different, or we've structured things slightly different, but we create this common planning time, but now we create the common planning time designed for teachers to operate and collaborate together, but then we keep pulling them for meetings and training and all the other things, and then we're taking that back away from them, and then they have to plan independently another time. So we have to, if we want teachers to have something like a common planning time, we have to honor that and not keep taking it away from them every single week. They need that time. This type of shift is going to require planning time. It's going to require more planning. We can't take an elementary teacher. They have to plan all for reading, writing, math, science, social. They have to plan for all 5 subjects and everything else. And they get 40 minutes a day to do that. What teacher can plan for 5 subjects and have only 40 minutes of 40-minute planning time? We need more planning time than that. So,
Like you said, shifting from the sage on the stage to the guide on the side.
yes.
I say that all the time.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
love
So,
that.
so we have to, I don't know, we have to rethink the structures in place and how we honor teachers' time and trust them to do their jobs.
Mhm.
And plan if we need to pull teachers together to teach, to make sure that they understand something, then we need to find other ways to do it, or other times to do it, and pay them for that time.
Mhm. I think I want to take it up a notch and talk about Robert Dill's theory on neurological levels. And basically, change doesn't happen at one level, it happens across environment, behavior, capabilities, beliefs, identity, and purpose. And I think when it comes to teacher burnout, more systems try to fix it at the environmental level and at the behavior level, right? They need more resources, they need new programs, they need different schedules. But burnout is rarely created at this level. I think it lives in deeper, it lives in the belief systems where they're thinking nothing will change because in their head they tried all these programs, all these schedules, and nothing is changing. But they're going to have to shift that mindset. And then the other area where it lives, it's the identity, like you were talking, Jeff, right now about surviving, right? So I'm just surviving, that's all. So their identity is a survivor, and because they're in that survivor mode, that's how you're going to operate. How do I survive? I'm fearful, how do I protect myself? So they're working in that environment level. And also sometimes we forget to tell them why they're going to do what they're doing. So purpose is another level that we need to work on. Like we need to constantly remind teachers so that they are not feeling the burnout, because sometimes at the beginning when there's change, there's confusion, there's not certainty, then there's that sense of surviving, there's that sense of I'm doing so much, I'm overwhelmed. But when you begin to break it down into priorities, and you need to break it down into why am I doing this? You know, and they're really is diving into that question. I think that we begin to make connections with A, B, C, you know, with all the steps that they need to take. And they begin to feel more comfortable. And then the burnout dies down a little bit. And it even helps the students that are not feeling safe, or they're not feeling seen, or they're not feeling comfortable when they're learning something new. So again, going back into that energy transfer that we were talking about earlier, you know, the conversion across the levels, you know, converting the confusion and helping them clarify, why are we doing this? How are we doing this? What steps are you going to be taking? Converting limiting beliefs like, no, 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 we cannot do this. You know, this is not possible. Like, if we convert those beliefs into possibilities, like, yes, we can change this. And then reconnecting an identity to purpose, you know, we are winners. We can do it. We can do this together, and building the collaboration of teams and leadership coming together as parents, teachers, leaders, superintendents, and everybody. I think it, I mean, it is going to take work, but I think there's more possibility because you're working at a different level. With Robert Dilts, I really love his work, and I've always used it even to shift mindsets and trying to figure out, okay, am I in the belief that I can't do it, or am I in the capability of I need to learn new skills in order to achieve this goal, right? Or am I in an identity of I'm not good enough, I can't do this? You know, I really have to figure out the level that I'm in, but it's starting at the environmental, going into the behavior, you know, what actions am I taking or not taking? And then going into capabilities, and then building up to the belief systems, emotions, identity, and purpose. I think that has helped me make changes in my life and in the work I do. And I mean, I would really love to kind of connect this piece into teacher burnout and leadership, and maybe one of our books, Donna. There were going to be words in there.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And it's also interconnected, right? I mean, everything, the way that we lead ties into everything and how everything's rolled out, you know. And we could talk a whole bunch. We could probably do a whole 45 minutes or an hour just on burnout of leaders. Our leadership turnover is probably higher than our teacher turnover. A district that I worked in had 6 leaders, and in 15 years they went through 56 people. That's high turnover.
It is. And I just want to touch on something based on the leadership. When I was the director of special education, I was there for 19 years in that position, in that role. And it was really interesting that one of the teachers was like, you know what, it's like, you're not doing enough. Or she was like, always like, I don't know if it was the energy of like trying to put me down. But then she became a director, and she only lasted for 1 year. Because when you're in the position, I mean, there's so many district leaders, so much alignment that you have to do across the district. And then we had 114 campuses. So imagine that. It's a huge district, you know, it's one of the biggest districts in Texas. So having to manage your role as in curriculum, special ed, compliance, plus teachers and parents, and you know, there's a lot of hats that we have to kind of be shifting. But then how do you do it? I want to use the word elegance today. How do you do it with elegance? Yet when you're sometimes not certain if you're making the right decision, if you're uncertain of people pleasing, right? Trying to please people, trying to make sure that everybody's satisfied and happy. You know, the principals, the executive leaders, and then compliance, where you have laws that you have to follow. Like, how do you manage all these hats? It's it brings the burnout, right? You're like, oh my God, I
Mhm.
can't do this.
Yeah.
Um, anyways, I just kind of
And if
wanted
we're not doing that, if we're not doing it well as leaders, it trickles down from us. Then that trickles down to the teachers, and then they're fumbling around. And if they're fumbling around, what's happening with their students, right? And so it all trickles. But unfortunately, what happens is, like, we're looking at all of our student outcomes. We're looking at student scores and all of these things. The student outcomes, that's a lagging indicator. So when student scores start to decline or they're staying stagnant, that's a lagging indicator that something way back in the system or a long time ago was misaligned. And then identifying where that misalignment is, that's the challenge, because it's usually invisible. It could be the lack of trust. It could be assumptions or gremlins. It could be just this one program is not in alignment with all of the other things that we have going on. So it could be like that, just something that's just out of line and is creating incoherence, and it trickles down to our students, but we don't see it until later. And so so then it's kind of like the check engine light on your car comes on, right? And the first thing you do, because surface level, you probably should check your oil, right? But then you find out that, well, the oil level's fine. The oil's clean. I just had an oil change. Doesn't seem to be leaking anywhere, right? You've checked all of that. And so then you're like, oh, maybe it was just like, maybe there's a bad sensor or something. So you ignore it, when really it could have been your piston rings were worn out. You had a leaky gasket in the center of your engine where you can't see it. There's somewhere else in your system that is causing that check engine light to come on, but we can't see it. And it's not going to cause problems until it's too late and now your engine has seized up on you, right?
Or you just scream at the check engine light to turn off over and over again and make that help. That's,
Just turn off, will you?
put a piece of tape over it and cover it up with something.
Yep.
that's a solution.
So transferable though to the schools. You see this happen all the time. You watch it.
That's
I
right.
have to say, Donna, I'm very impressed with your car knowledge in terms of what could be wrong when the check engine light goes on. I feel like I was learning something about gaskets, but I did want to chime in and just add on to what you were talking about with like student learning outcomes. And this brings me back to a conversation I had with the teacher a couple of years ago, and she was very frustrated with a handful of students in her classroom because they were not sitting. They weren't sitting in their seats. And that's what she wanted them to do. And I said, I'm gonna ask you, what is the outcome? What do you want them to do? She says, I want them to sit in their seats. And I said, okay. I see you teaching the inner rings of the solar system, inner planets of the solar system. You can either insist that they sit in their chair, or they can learn about the inner planets of the solar system, but you're not going to get both. You're not going to get both. If you're insisting that they're sitting in the chair, you have shifted the outcome.
Mhm.
Your outcome is now them sitting. Them sitting does not mean that they're learning, which is really what the learning outcome should be. And that just, the shift for her was astronomical. She couldn't, and I said, listen, they could stand behind their desk. They can sit on the floor with a clipboard. She says, they can. I said, absolutely. I said, because you want the learning outcome. How are you going to get that? We've got to shift how we're insisting that we do certain things in the classroom.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. That reminds me, I had a class one year, and group. They were not a very academic group, but they were a social group. So getting them enamored with learning was like a things. And I had one student who, if you picture like the Peanuts cartoon and Pigpen, he's got like all the dirt flying around all over the place. Well, he would set his stuff all over the place, right? And then the kids would be, so and so is like, he's putting his stuff on my desk, and it used to drive his classmates crazy. So what I did is I asked all the students, I said, I want you to tell me how you learn best. Do you learn best with a partner, by yourself, in a group of 4? Do you need a table to sit at? Like, do you need just not sit well at a desk? And so finally, I took all of their information. And so I arranged my classroom based on how they told me that they learned best, or where in the classroom they learned best, if they needed to stand or sit. So if they needed to stand, sometimes they had a seat in the back of the room so they could stand up easily and not distract the class. The student who was like disheveled all the time, I gave him the whole table and the teacher chair. And all the other kids were upset. They're like, well, why does he get that? And I was like, well, is he going to be like putting all of his stuff all over your stuff now? Well, no. So is that something he needs and you don't? Well, okay, yeah. So that, that's equity. And then I had the principal who liked things nice and neat and orderly, things in rows. She walks in and she's like, what is happening in here? And I was like, the kids are in their spaces where they learn best, right? So if they need to have someone next to them to like make sure that they understand what they're supposed to be doing and they check in with each other, or if they work better in a small group because, for whatever reason, or if they work better by themselves or in the back of the room, and she just couldn't, she had a struggle wrapping her head around that. But it transformed how learning was happening in the classroom just by asking them. And it didn't look neat and orderly, but it worked.
But you gave them ownership over their own learning.
Absolutely.
How to even begin to feel comfortable and safe in an environment that would lead to deeper learning.
Yeah. Because by that time, we had tried so many configurations that we knew which ones were working for them and which ones weren't.
Right.
So, yeah, anyway, back to teacher burnout.
I mean, I don't know what can you share? I think because storytelling is life experience, and I think they make a deeper impact when we're having conversations. So if you could name like an experience of the burnout briefly, because later what my intentions and Donna's is like, we also want to be able to do little clips here and there about these topics, because I think they're very important, and being able to capture more attendance to our flipping the script executive roundtable. So if you don't mind, DJ and Jeff, sharing a little bit about your experience.
I have one example that I watched, and it was a neat transition. It was when we tried to get PLCs going at our district in the Binghamton schools, and initially they did the trainers, and they came, and it was data driven, and initially the way it was rolled out, it was adding not just another plate to our table as teachers, but it was adding a whole new set of like tons of stuff on top of the things we already had. And we never connected it to the why. I go back to that Robert Dilts theory there. I was looking through it after you had mentioned it because I wasn't too familiar with him, but it's impressive. But and I encourage anybody to go deeper into it because it really does break things up nicely. But it did not connect the why. It did not connect the what. It just said, this is what you have to do. You have to spend 2 hours of your time each week, and you have to, give us this data. And then we're checking a box. And it had nothing to connect it to how does it affect my kids? And for a year or two, it was rough, and that was tied right in when we all had to do our binders, and we had to create our portfolios and all these things that just went to the office and maybe weren't looked at, but they were another box to check. So that very quickly, after a year or two, it was changed. We kind of rebranded it. It came back out. Teachers were part of the process, and we helped develop the form to fill out. And we got to choose things with our counterparts that were meaningful, that would directly affect our students, analyze our students' data immediately, and go back and reteach and reassess. And that was how it became, okay, it was connected. So yeah, there was burnout. There was teachers ready to leave. There was teachers looking in other places. They lost that love for why they got into this business in the first place. Because I don't think any teacher got into the business to just grade papers, teach to the test, and dictate from the front of the room to be regurgitated. And that's something where you got to fall back to those passions you have and really address. But that's my one example there.
Yeah. And it connects to values too, what you value. So the teachers who really value deep learning, and now they're struggling because of the expectations that are now put on them, and things haven't been rolled out in a coherent way, and they're wondering what the purpose of doing all of this extra stuff is other than checking a box. Their teaching no longer is connected to their values. Right. And so I think that happens with leadership too. Like the energy that you put forth and the way that your values play into all of that also impacts teacher turnover and burnout as well. So
I think my example would be working as a coach in a large district. We were tasked with going out and sharing data with special ed teachers. And so I went out to talk to, one of the teachers that was on my caseload, and she was a former gen ed teacher who was feeling burned out in her position, and her administrator moved her mid-year into a special ed position, thinking that would help with her burnout. So when I got there, ready to talk about data, she cried. She cried for the first 10 minutes. And once she, gained her composure, I said to her, what is the best way that I can support you right now? Because I was sent to talk to you about data. That seems like a secondary concern, but how can I best help you? And she said, I just have a group of first graders and I have no idea what to do with them, and I feel really useless. And I said, okay, well, let's take some time. They happen to be, this little group happened to be coming in right after our discussion. I was able to sit with her kids, coach in, give her a bunch of ideas. And her burnout, in a nutshell, in this particular position, even though she had just started, was coming from a place of not having enough tools, not having strategies, not having permission to try some different things to lead to a positive student learning outcome. So sometimes I think as support folks to a district, to a school, the best way we can support and help alleviate that burnout is just be a sounding board for teachers, to be that person that they can come to and say, I'm really struggling. What do I do?
Yeah.
And providing that, that safe space, and, it's a labor of love to be a teacher. I loved being a teacher, and now I love supporting teachers, but teachers can't do it alone. They certainly can't do it in a silo. So knowing that they have safe people that they can go to and say, hey, I'm really struggling, need you to help me.
I think when the teachers don't have that GPS on, they know where they need to go, but it's like a destination. If I want to go to Chicago and I don't know how to get there, I don't know what road to take, then I'm not even going to take an initiative to start moving towards Chicago because I don't know how to get there, right? I don't even know how to start. But I think if we give them that, we build that internal GPS and we guide them on how to get there. Because as a special education teacher, when I started as a special education teacher, that was like my first position. Yes, they teach you how to write lesson plans in college, but it's never the same thing when you're, in the field.
Right.
It's completely different. So I think, and then it's scary, like Jeff was talking about a while ago, and DJ, it's like, how do I start? How do I get there? Am I doing it the right way? Am I doing it the wrong way? The not knowing of how to even start when you're a new teacher. I think that's a new topic, Donna, that we need to discuss. The new teachers, how do you work with them, and then versus the experienced teacher that has no growth. I think that's another conversation for later. But the burnout piece, a lot of times it's not knowing how to start.
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm wondering, like, as we kind of start to wrap things up, thinking about moving forward, what ideas that came out of this conversation here, um, whether it be on energy leadership or teacher burnout, what things struck you as something that, like, if a school district or a principal were to implement one thing or take one thing away from this conversation, what one thing should they take away?
I would say over everything else, before you even try to do anything or give any permissions or whatever, even if you think you're a very visible person, don't be visible. Be present. So, as DJ said before in the class, you go into a classroom, don't just walk in and, oh, cool, everything's great, but get to know your teachers well enough, and eventually you will be able to be present. Get in there, roll up the sleeves, get in the science lesson, sit down, sit next to a kid, and just be that aide for a minute. Be present, and that's gonna help you. And depending on what stage you're at, if you've never been in a classroom before, that could be terrifying. Let the teachers know in the faculty meeting, and you really want to start getting in there, block that time right in your schedule every day. You have to schedule yourself 9 o'clock to 10:30. I am in the hall. I am not available. I am going to be in the halls. I'm going to be in the classrooms. Pick a certain classroom every day. In a month, you'll be in most of your classrooms, and be present. And that observation is going to be just like another day you just were present, and all that stress and all that stuff's going to help. So that'd be my one piece of advice: be present, not just visible.
Yeah.
I think my one piece of advice goes back to what Dr. B said a little bit ago about making sure that teachers don't understand the why behind why we're making a shift or why we're asking them to do something different, and then the how, to give them the tools and the support to be able to do it successfully. I think the what, the how, and the why are three very, very intertwined questions that need to be answered and supported. So whether it's rolling out something at the district level or just a school administrator having a conversation with a teacher, that they're providing those three pieces.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great stuff. I think that going back to, you really have to take a step back when you're implementing anything. Look at all of your systems and how they are interacting together, and think carefully. And Angelica, I'm going to be looking up Robert Dild as well. I don't recall coming across his work, but that has struck with me as well. But carefully planning how to roll something out so that we're not overwhelming teachers. We're building the connections of how things are all intertwined and braided together. Um, I think that is a critical piece, because when you say we're going to do X, but we're already doing these three things that are aligned with this, it takes cognitive load off of the teachers. We've got to find ways to reduce the cognitive load because they're carrying so much. And that's a way that I feel that we can support our teachers, so that they can do the work that they need to do. They didn't get into education to mess up kids' lives. They got into education because they care about the kids that they work with. They love their kids. They got into education to make a difference. And they're feeling like they can't right now. And we need to shift that so that they have the opportunity to demonstrate their own brilliance and genius.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I really feel that the discussions were about, first of all, some teachers or leaders know information and they don't know how they even know it, right? And then there's some that don't even know that they don't even know the information. So because of not knowing that you need to know something, I think awareness is a big piece. It's like really having conversations where everybody's aware of the expectations of the district goals, and then they trickle down to campus goals, to teacher goals, to students' expectations, so they're kind of all in alignment. But the awareness is a big piece. And then diving deeper into an understanding of the expectations, and then diving deeper into the roadmap, being aware, understanding, and then seeing a roadmap on this is where we're going to start. This is where we plan to get. And then how do we get there? Guiding them and aligning. I think it is hard because, you're talking about big districts to small districts, and then aligning all the departments, all the district leaders to speak the same language of awareness, understanding, roadmap, and
Mhm.
action taking, where and how are we going to get there? What vehicles are we going to take? Are we taking trucks? Are we taking fire trucks? Are we taking cars? I'm just using metaphors here, but what are we going to take, once we have that understanding? What are the tools, the vehicles that we're going to take to get to our destination, right? And like Jeff says, there's going to be fires. So how do we, and how DJ said, intentionality, how do we intend to turn off those fires, right? And then get to the destination. And again, I really want to end with something because I think I've been a victim of it myself, where we're looking at the destination, and looking at the destination frustrates us, overwhelms us, because sometimes it's a long path, right? It's a year, 2 years to get there, and it becomes frustrating and overwhelming. But if we look at the journey instead of the destination, and as you're going through the journey, you're celebrating the baby steps and the tiny steps along the way, and you're giving encouragement and confidence, like, hey, we're doing the right thing. Hey, we're going and achieving this. As we're achieving the baby steps, it's going to give your staff, your leaders, your teachers, your students confidence of, I'm on the right track. I'm doing the right thing. And if they're not, then how do you bring them back without making them feel, um, um gosh, I don't even know if I should use the word, um, inadequate, unprofessional, or whatever it might be. But how do you bring them back and saying, you know what, I think we took the wrong road, whether it's a campus decision, teacher decision, but how do you bring them back to be on track on that roadmap so that we continue to be in alignment without making them feel bad and wrong, but more of an experiment? And you know what, it didn't work. Let's come back this way. I mean, that is my takeaway from leadership energy, and being in alignment and helping to avoid the burnout, right? Being able to celebrate the journey instead of trying to achieve the destination. Because once we achieve the destination, even before we get there, we're already thinking of the next destination. And then we're overwhelmed because now we had this destination, the other one that's coming, and the overwhelmment will always be there and the burnout.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
Yeah.
This is a journey, not the destination. Famous
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, I think we're concluded
Well,
fairly
let me just conclude
earlier,
so we
but
can introduce our next thing so people
Yeah.
can know.
yeah.
So let's kind of close it up with thanking Jeff, DJ, for showing up. And all of you who will be listening to this video, we want to thank you for showing up and leaning in on flipping the script, executive roundtables. Now, again, it's not about the discussions, it's about the actions that we're going to be taking and
Mhm.
the roadmap, right? So because when we begin to shift leadership energy, we're going to begin to shift the entire systems. So this conversation is not going to end here because we're inviting you to take your voice, your experience, and your leadership to the next level. So we want to invite you to join us in Flipping the Script collaborative book, where you share your story, your experience, and you become part of a movement. It's not just a book, it's a movement, because we are trying to revolutionize the educational system. And you know what? We can't do it ourselves, me and Donna, or Jeff and DJ, because everybody's an expert in their own field, and the gaps that are missing in the educational system in the field that you're in. So we need you to come in and join us in this collaborative book and share your message.
Mhm.
And also, we're just getting started and inviting everyone to continue to join us in Flipping the Script roundtable discussions. We're going to be back in June, and Donna will go a little deeper in that. The topics are trauma-informed instruction and behavior systems. And these are conversations that are going to move us from insight to implementation. Do you want to say anything about that, Donna?
Yeah. So for trauma-informed instruction, we have one of our authors from one of our previous books, Elizabeth Power, and that is her focus. That is her sole focus, is focusing in on how we support students who have been experiencing trauma. We'll be diving into that. I know specifically in urban settings, where kids are experiencing violence on the street, and they may have seen their neighbor, be shot or something. Sounds horrible, but it happens, and they're expected to just come to school the next day and just act like everything is normal, when really their whole life has just been like traumatized. So we really need to dive into that, understand that a little bit better. And then when we talk about our behavior supports, we have Reverend Dr. Robert Spicer, who I had the opportunity to work with in Syracuse City Schools years ago. He is incredible. He's a great speaker. He has helped turn schools around out in the Midwest, and is really focused on restorative circles, restorative justice. He's an author. He has his own book out that's all about restorative justice. And so he'll be very insightful, and I can't wait to dive into these conversations with these people who are experts. And again, we would love to have other people, including DJ, Jeff, if you want to join back in. We'd love to hear the voices, because Angelica and I have a common friend. Angelica introduced me to her, Dr. Robbie Motter, and I always love her phrase, and I steal it all the time, is that we don't compete with each other, we complete each other, right? Even if some of us are doing some of the same work, we still aren't competing. There are so many schools out there. We complete each other, because we have to, as Dr. B said, we have to make this a movement. to really support our schools and shift what we're doing in our schools. And no one person is going to do it alone. We've got to stop operating in silos and start collaborating together and supporting each other. So, yeah, so we have a bunch to look forward to. It'll be the first Thursday in June. We'll be putting out another LinkedIn event. There'll be a registration link. We ask you to register so you get the link in your email. We'll put it on Eventbrite again as well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah. And then if you're ready to rethink education and realign leadership for those of you that are listening and create a lasting impact, we want to invite you to join us in Flipping the Script live conference. It's going to be a powerful in-person experience, bringing together educators, leaders, innovators, and change makers who are ready to move beyond and outdated systems. So, and move into transformational solutions. So we want to see you here in Texas. It's coming. Hopefully we're looking at September 24th and 25th. So all the information is coming soon. And again, thank you so much, Jeff and DJ, for being here today. And of course, Donna, you know, I love you, and we'll stay connected to do bigger and more things to really change the school, flipping the script.
I love it. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.
And then stop the streaming.
Yeah.